My name is Angelina Adams. I am 67 years old, and until 2 years ago, I thought I had a perfect life. A respected university professor with a successful career, a beautiful home in Connecticut, and what I believed was a happy 40-year marriage. Then I saw her, my own daughter Sophia, standing at that charity banquet introducing herself as Mrs. Adams. My husband William stood beside her, smiling proudly. In their minds, I was gone forever. But I walked into that room and watched their faces turn white. Before I tell you how I reclaimed what was rightfully mine, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself when nobody believed in you. I met William Adams in 1982 at a faculty mixer at Brentwood University. I was 34 then, a new English literature professor with big dreams and a freshly printed doctorate from Columbia. William was 40, a charming economics professor with salt and pepper hair, a disarming smile, and the kindest blue eyes I had ever seen. He approached me that evening while I was standing alone by the refreshment table, feeling out of place among the established academics. The cheese cubes are mediocre, but the conversation does not have to be, he said, with a warm smile that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. William Adams' Economics Department. That simple introduction changed my life. We talked until the janitors began stacking chairs around us, discussing everything from Jane Austen to fiscal policy. By the end of the night, I knew something special was happening. Our courtship was a whirlwind. William sent flowers to my office every Friday. We spent weekends exploring New England's small towns, hiking mountain trails, and discussing books over cups of coffee in quaint cafes. Within 8 months, he proposed during a sunset picnic overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. I said yes without hesitation. We married in a small ceremony at the university chapel that spring. I never thought I could be so happy. With our combined savings, we purchased a Victorian home in the suburbs of Connecticut. It needed work, but William and I spent weekends stripping wallpaper, painting walls, and transforming it into our dream home. Those early years were full of laughter, passion, and endless possibilities. For several years, we focused on our careers. William was brilliant at economics publishing papers and slowly climbing the academic ladder. I threw myself into teaching literature to bright-eyed undergraduates, helping them discover the same passion for words that had guided my life. When I turned 37, we decided to try for a child. It was not an easy journey. 3 miscarriages left me heartbroken and questioning if motherhood would ever be my reality. The doctors used words like advanced maternal age and diminishing ovarian reserve. But we persisted, and when I was 39, a miracle happened. I gave birth to our daughter Sophia Grace Adams. She was beautiful with William's blue eyes and my dark curls. From the moment I held her, I felt a love so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. I took a sabbatical from teaching to be with her during those precious early years. William continued working his career, accelerating as he was appointed department chair, which meant more responsibilities and frequent business trips. Sophia was a bright child, speaking in full sentences before she was 2 reading by age 4. She had William's analytical mind and my love for storytelling. But even in those early years, I noticed things that troubled me. The way she would become intensely jealous if William showed me affection. How she would tell small lies to get her way. The tantrums when she did not get what she wanted were fierce beyond typical childhood behavior. "She is just spirited," William would say, dismissing my concerns. "She will grow out of it." Despite these moments, we were a happy family. We had Sunday brunches where William made his famous blueberry pancakes. Every summer we rented the same beachfront cottage in Martha's Vineyard for 2 weeks. Sophia and I would collect seashells, while William read economics journals under an umbrella. In the evenings, we would walk along the shore, Sophia between us, holding our hands as the waves lapped at our feet. Our family was well regarded in the community. William served on the university board and various civic committees. I balanced teaching with volunteering at the local literacy center. Sophia excelled in school-winning science fairs and leading the debate team. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect family. But as Sophia entered her teenage years, cracks began to appear. She became increasingly defiant, especially toward me. She would seek William's approval on everything, often undermining my authority as her mother. If I set a reasonable boundary like a curfew, she would call William at work crying, and he would often override my decision when he came home. "You are too harsh with her," he would say. "She needs space to grow." Meanwhile, William became emotionally distant. He was physically present, coming home for dinner most nights, attending Sophia's school events, maintaining our social calendar. But something had shifted. Conversations that once flowed easily became perfunctory. The passion that had characterized our early marriage cooled. He spent more time in his study door closed, working late into the night. I told myself it was normal, the evolution of a long marriage, the pressure of his position. I dismissed the uneasiness growing in my stomach as empty nest anxiety as Sophia prepared for college. When Sophia left for university, choosing to study business like her father, I returned to full-time teaching. I poured my energy into my work, finally writing the book on feminist perspectives in 19th century literature that I had been planning for years. To my surprise, it was well received, earning critical acclaim and adoptions in university curricula nationwide. William seemed proud of my success, at least publicly. He hosted a launch party for my book, inviting colleagues and friends to celebrate. Looking back, I should have noticed how he kept introducing me as my wife, the author, rather than using my name. As our 40th wedding anniversary approached, I felt hopeful. With Sophia grown and both of our careers flourishing, perhaps we could reconnect, find our way back to each other. I began planning a second honeymoon to Italy, where we had always talked about visiting together. I thought we had all the time in the world to rebuild what might have been lost along the way. I was wrong, so very wrong. The first hint that something was seriously wrong came in the form of a credit card statement. While paying bills one afternoon, I noticed several charges from restaurants in town that I had never visited. Expensive restaurants with bills for 2 people on evenings when William had told me he was working late at the university. Must be a mistake, I told myself, but the uneasiness grew. Then came the secretive phone calls. William, who had always talked freely on the phone around me, began stepping outside to take certain calls. When his phone would ring, he would glance at the screen and either silence it or hurry to another room to answer. If I walked in during a conversation, he would abruptly change the subject or end the call. "Just university business," he would say, with a dismissive wave when I asked. "Nothing for you to worry about." When Sophia came home for Thanksgiving break during her junior year of college, I noticed a strange hostility from her. She barely spoke to me, directly communicating through William whenever possible. They seemed to share private jokes and knowing glances, leaving me feeling like an outsider in my own home. The special bond between father and daughter had always existed, but it had transformed into something that felt almost exclusive, as if they were allied against me. They would have hushed conversations that stopped the moment I entered a room. When I asked what they were discussing, the answer was always vague. "Just helping Dad with some investment strategies," Sophia would say, her business education apparent in her confident tone. The holiday weekend left me feeling hollow, but I tried to dismiss it as adjustment pains. Perhaps this was just how family dynamics shifted as children grew into adults. Then came my health scare. I had a minor stroke while lecturing one day, collapsing mid-sentence while discussing Virginia Woolf with my undergraduate seminar. I was rushed to the hospital, and though the doctors assured me it was not serious and would leave no permanent damage, the experience shook me deeply. William's reaction disturbed me more. He came to the hospital, of course, but there was a detachment to his concern. He went through the motions of a worried husband, but his eyes were calculating, almost cold, as he spoke with the doctors. He seemed more interested in my prognosis than in how I was feeling. Sophia flew in from school, supposedly, to help care for me. But I overheard a phone conversation between her and William late one night as I was resting in our bedroom. "This changes the timeline," William whispered. "We need to accelerate things." "Is it serious enough?" Sophia asked. "Not yet, but it gives us a foundation. We will need to be careful." I had no idea what they were talking about, but the secretive nature of their conversation sent a chill through me. 2 weeks after my stroke, I was organizing William's study while he was at work, something I had done countless times over our marriage. Behind a row of economics textbooks, I found a second cell phone I had never seen before. My hands trembled as I turned it on, but it required a passcode. I placed it exactly where I had found it, but the discovery haunted me. When I casually mentioned finding a phone while cleaning, William claimed it was an old university-issued device he had forgotten to turn in. His explanation seemed plausible, but something in his too-quick response made me doubt him. The next day, the phone was gone from its hiding place. "I have a surprise planned for our anniversary," he said unprompted at dinner that night. "That is why I have been a bit secretive lately. I do not want to ruin it." I wanted to believe him. 40 years of marriage made me want to trust the man I had built a life with, but the explanation did not quite fit the pattern of behavior I was witnessing. A week later, a colleague from the English department, Martha, stopped me after a faculty meeting. "I saw William and your daughter at Le Petit Bistrot last weekend," she said casually. "They were having quite an intense conversation. Is everything okay?" Le Petit Bistrot was the most expensive restaurant in town, known for its romantic atmosphere. It was also one of the charges I had noticed on our credit card statement. "They are working on a surprise for me," I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Martha gave me an odd look. "Well, it seemed rather intimate for father and daughter. I just thought it strange that he had his arm around her chair like that." The image made me physically ill, but I forced a smile and changed the subject. That evening, I called my best friend Janet, who had known me since graduate school and had been a bridesmaid at my wedding. I confided my growing concerns. "I have never trusted that girl," Janet said bluntly. "There has always been something calculating in her eyes, even as a child, and William has always indulged her every whim." "She is my daughter," I protested weakly. "Yes, and that is why you have been blind to her manipulation. Have you checked your financial accounts lately?" I had not, but Janet's question prompted me to look more closely. What I found disturbed me deeply. William had been transferring significant sums to offshore accounts over the past year. When confronted, he claimed they were investments for our retirement, but he became defensive when I asked for details. Then came the brochure for luxury retirement communities that arrived in our mail. I had never expressed interest in such places, preferring our home with its memories and comforts. "I thought we might consider downsizing," William said when I showed him the brochure. "The house is too big for just us now." "I love our home," I replied. "I have no intention of leaving it." A shadow passed over his face, quickly replaced with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Of course, darling. It was just an idea. As our anniversary approached, William suggested I take a 2-week spa retreat in Arizona. "You have been working so hard on your book promotions," he said. "And the doctors said stress reduction is important after your stroke. Consider it an early anniversary gift. When you come back, we will celebrate properly." I was reluctant to go, sensing something was deeply wrong, but William was insistent. He painted a picture of relaxation massage therapy and healing mineral baths. I agreed, hoping that some distance might give me clarity and that perhaps our relationship could be salvaged upon my return. The day before my departure, I tried to contact our family lawyer about William's financial transfers. I had known Robert Jacobson for decades, and he had handled all our legal matters. But his secretary seemed flustered when I called. "Mr. Jacobson cannot speak with you at this time, Mrs. Adams. Perhaps you should discuss any concerns with your husband." That response sent warning bells ringing through my mind. As William drove me to the airport, I noticed he seemed almost giddy, a lightness to his step I had not seen in years. He kissed me goodbye at security, a lingering kiss that felt performative, as if for the benefit of onlookers rather than a genuine expression of affection. "Take care of yourself, Angelina," he said. "Everything will be different when you return." The ominous undertone of his words would not register until much later, when I realized he had not been wishing me well. He had been saying goodbye. The car that picked me up from the Phoenix airport was not the luxury sedan promised by the spa brochure, but a white van with small tinted windows. The driver, a broad-shouldered man in scrubs, greeted me with a practiced smile. "Mrs. Adams, I am from Serenity Wellness Center." I thought it was called Desert Tranquility Spa, I said, checking my booking confirmation. "Same ownership, different branding," he replied smoothly. "Please allow me to take your luggage." The drive was longer than expected, taking us away from the city into the sparse desert landscape. We eventually turned onto a private road leading to a compound surrounded by high walls. As we approached the gate, I noticed the sign, "Serenity Hills Psychiatric Facility." "There must be some mistake," I said, alarm rising in my throat. "I am booked for a spa retreat." The driver did not respond as we passed through security. When we stopped, 2 attendants in medical uniforms approached the van. "Welcome to Serenity Hills, Mrs. Adams. Dr. Winters is expecting you." Before I could protest further, I was escorted inside my confusion, mounting with each step. In a sterile office, I met Dr. Winters, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a clipboard. "Mrs. Adams, I understand you are experiencing some confusion. That is perfectly normal given your condition. My condition: I am here for a spa retreat. There has been a mistake." Dr. Winters exchanged glances with the attendants. "Your husband explained everything: the paranoia, the accusations, the erratic behavior following your stroke. We have all your admission paperwork right here, signed by your husband and daughter, along with a court order for temporary psychiatric evaluation." He slid documents across the desk. There was my medical history distorted to suggest mental deterioration, statements claiming I had become paranoid, accusing William of affairs and financial misconduct. A psychiatric evaluation I had never undergone, diagnosing me with post-stroke psychosis and paranoid delusions. Most shocking was a judge's order for a 30-day psychiatric hold with provision for extension based on doctor recommendations. This is fraud. I never had these symptoms. I never saw this doctor. My husband has engineered this. Dr. Winters nodded sympathetically to the attendants. "As you can see, the paranoid ideation is quite pronounced. Let us get Mrs. Adams settled and begin her medication protocol." Despite my protests, I was led to a sparse room, given a hospital gown, and had my belongings confiscated. That evening, I was forced to take medication that left me groggy and disoriented. Days blended together as they adjusted my dosages, each increase, making it harder to maintain clear thoughts. I tried repeatedly to use the patient phone to call Janet or my department chair, but discovered my calls were being monitored. When I mentioned William's deception, I was documented as exhibiting continued paranoid thoughts, and my phone privileges were restricted. 3 weeks into my stay during a group therapy session, I met Eleanor Blackwood. She was in her 70s, elegant, despite the institutional setting with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. After the session, she approached me in the common area. "They have got you on quite the cocktail," she said quietly. "Makes it hard to fight back, does it not?" I nodded, struggling to form clear sentences through the medication fog. "Your husband?" she asked simply. "And daughter?" I managed. Eleanor nodded. "Mine was my son and his wife. Wanted my estate. Had me declared incompetent after I refused to change my will. It is more common than you would think, especially with wealthy older women. Get their spouse declared mentally unfit, control the assets, eventually divorce them while they are institutionalized." Her words pierced through my medicated haze, crystallizing what I had begun to suspect. This was not a mistake. It was a calculated plan. Over the following days, Eleanor explained how she was fighting her own case, working with an outside attorney who specialized in elder abuse. She helped me recognize how the facility's procedures were designed to reinforce whatever diagnosis had been provided upon admission. "Every time you protest, it becomes evidence of your condition," she explained. "Every time you insist you are sane, they mark down that you lack insight into your illness." Through Eleanor, I learned, William had presented a carefully curated history to my colleagues, sharing concerns about my mental health for months before my breakdown. He had shown selected colleagues altered emails, where I supposedly made bizarre accusations. He had even played recordings of arguments edited to remove context and make me sound irrational. One evening, a night shift nurse named Maria was checking my vitals. Unlike the other staff, she looked me directly in the eyes with genuine compassion. "You don't belong here, do you?" she asked quietly. "No," I whispered, afraid to hope. "I have worked here 5 years. I can tell the difference between actual psychiatric patients and people who have been put here for convenience." Over the next week, Maria became my lifeline. She reduced my medication when no one was looking, allowing my mind to clear. She smuggled me a prepaid phone to call Janet, who was horrified to learn where I really was. "William told everyone you had a mental breakdown after your stroke," Janet said, her voice tight with anger. "That you were in a specialized care facility by your own choice. He has been playing the devoted, concerned husband, while Sophia has stepped in as the woman of the house. They have been holding dinner parties in your home, attending university functions together." Even more alarming, Janet revealed William had been transferring our joint assets, changing beneficiaries on insurance policies, and preparing divorce papers, citing my mental incompetence. "He cannot get away with this," I said, determination, replacing the fear and confusion of the previous weeks. With Maria's help, Eleanor and I documented the facility's practices. Maria took photos of my chart, showing how normal responses were being pathologized. She recorded conversations with other staff who admitted they were under instruction to interpret my behavior according to the diagnosis William had provided. Eleanor contacted her attorney, who anonymously reported the facility to state authorities for patient rights violations. The resulting investigation brought a legal advocate to the facility who interviewed patients privately. When she reached me, I presented the evidence Maria had helped gather. The advocate was visibly disturbed by what she saw. "This appears to be a clear case of involuntary commitment under false pretenses," she said. "I will be filing an emergency petition for your release, pending a full investigation." 3 days later, after a hearing where the facility could not produce legitimate psychiatric evaluations prior to my admission, I was released. The judge ordered an independent psychiatric evaluation, which quickly confirmed I had no signs of psychosis or delusion. With Janet waiting outside in her car, I left Serenity Hills 67 days after I had arrived. My body felt weak, my mind still occasionally foggy from medication residue, but my resolve was ironclad. Janet drove me directly to my home in Connecticut, but the house I had lived in for 40 years had been transformed. The locks had been changed. Through the windows, I could see my furniture was gone, replaced with modern pieces I did not recognize. My garden had been re-landscaped, my beloved rose bushes removed. My neighbor Thomas Wilson was retrieving his mail when he saw me standing on my own front lawn. His face paled as if seeing a ghost. "Angelina, my God, is that really you?" "Yes, Thomas. Why do you look so shocked?" He approached cautiously. "William said you had been moved to a long-term care facility, that your condition was deteriorating, and you didn't recognize people anymore." "As you can see, I am perfectly fine," I said, anger building. "What else has William been saying?" Thomas looked uncomfortable. "He and Sophia have been living here together. They told everyone you requested they maintain the family home in your absence. There have been rumors, though." "What kind of rumors?" He hesitated. "Some neighbors have questioned their relationship. It seems unusually close for father and daughter. And she has been introducing herself socially as Mrs. Adams, which many found strange." Standing there on the sidewalk, locked out of my own home, I realized the full scope of what William and Sophia had done. They had not just tried to commit me, they had tried to erase me entirely. Janet insisted I stay with her while we figured out my next steps. Her guest room became my new home as I worked to piece together what had happened during my absence. "William told everyone at the university that you had early onset dementia, accelerated by your stroke," Janet explained, as we sat in her kitchen the morning after my return. He presented himself as the heartbroken husband, caring for his mentally deteriorating wife. And people believed him. My colleagues, my friends. I was perfectly fine when I left. Janet sighed. "He had been laying groundwork for months, mentioning your supposedly erratic behavior to select colleagues. After your stroke, he used your medical vulnerability to create a narrative of cognitive decline." With Janet's help, I began investigating the extent of William and Sophia's betrayal. What we discovered was more disturbing than I had imagined. William had transferred most of our assets into accounts only he could access using powers of attorney I had never signed. Our home had been placed in a trust with Sophia as beneficiary. My retirement accounts had been liquidated, the funds moved offshore. A visit to my department chair revealed William had submitted my resignation letter 3 months earlier, claiming I was too ill to continue teaching. My position had already been filled by a new professor. I was surprised by the abruptness my chair admitted. But William assured us, "It was on your instruction," and the medical documentation seemed comprehensive. Even more shocking, I discovered my book royalties were now being directed to a new account I had no access to. When I contacted my publisher, they confirmed the change had been made through seemingly legitimate documentation. Social media provided the most disturbing revelations. Janet's daughter helped us search online, finding dozens of photos of William and Sophia attending university functions, charity events, and social gatherings. They posed together in ways that seemed inappropriate for father and daughter, his arm often around her waist, her head on his shoulder. In many captions, they were referred to as a grieving family dealing with my tragic condition. Sophia had even given an interview to the local paper about the challenges of caring for a loved one with dementia while carrying on the family legacy. I needed legal help beyond what Janet's connections could provide. Through Eleanor's recommendation, I contacted Michael Torres, an attorney specializing in cases of elder abuse and fraudulent institutionalization. "What you are describing is unfortunately not unique," Michael explained during our first meeting. "It is a sophisticated form of gaslighting and financial abuse. Your husband created a narrative of your mental decline, used it to gain control of your assets, and attempted to erase your identity and independence." Michael recommended hiring a private investigator to document William and Sophia's current activities. The evidence the investigator gathered was sickening. William and Sophia were indeed living together in my home as a couple, not in a physically incestuous relationship, the investigator clarified, but in a bizarre role play where Sophia had essentially stepped into my position in every way. She slept in the guest room, but otherwise occupied all the spaces that had been mine. More disturbingly, Sophia had legally changed her name from Sophia Grace Adams to simply Sophia Adams, dropping her middle name to create the appearance of being Mrs. Adams without technically committing fraud. The investigator provided photos of Sophia wearing my jewelry, my clothes, even carrying my signature handbag at social events. She had adopted my hairstyle, my mannerisms, even the way I organized dinner parties and social gatherings. At faculty functions, William openly introduced Sophia as the new Mrs. Adams, allowing people to assume she was his new wife, while technically referring to her new legal name. Their deception was calculated to exist in a gray area just short of prosecutable fraud. Most painfully, Sophia had begun claiming my professional accomplishments as her own. Former students reported confusion after meeting her at alumni events, where she discussed writing my book and teaching classes I had taught. "She is essentially attempting to become you," Michael observed gravely. "This goes beyond financial motives into psychological territory I find deeply troubling." Further investigation revealed William had filed for divorce while I was institutionalized, citing my alleged mental incompetence. The divorce proceedings had been delayed only because the judge wanted an independent evaluation of my condition, which William had been avoiding. The most shocking discovery came when the investigator located Sophia's diary in her apartment near campus. She had maintained it since her teenage years, and its contents revealed a disturbing obsession with replacing me. Mom gets everything she had written at 16. The respect, the admiration, the love. Dad would be happier with someone who understands him like I do. Someday, I'll take her place. Entries throughout her college years detailed her resentment of my academic success, my relationship with William, even my physical appearance. She had methodically studied me, learning to mimic my speech patterns, my interests, my social connections. The diary contained explicit plans developed with William to have me committed and declared incompetent. They had researched facilities, practiced forging my signature, even rehearsed how they would explain my absence to friends and colleagues. "The plan is working," she wrote after my institutionalization. "Soon she will be nothing but a sad memory, and I will be the only Mrs. Adams anyone remembers." The diary provided concrete evidence of conspiracy, but the most urgent revelation came from William's business partner, who contacted Michael after hearing rumors of my return. William and your daughter needed your assets for an investment scheme that was failing, he explained. They had leveraged everything, and without access to your funds, they would have faced bankruptcy and possible criminal charges for financial irregularities. The final piece of the puzzle came when we learned about the upcoming university donor banquet. William and Sophia were scheduled to receive an Alumni Service Award presented in both their names. It was to be their most public appearance yet, as the new Adams family. The irony was painful. The award recognized contributions to the university, including many initiatives I had spearheaded. They would be honored for my work while I had been erased. As I studied the invitation Janet had obtained, a plan began forming in my mind. The banquet would gather university leadership, faculty donors, and alumni, essentially everyone who had been fed lies about me for months. "This is where I make my stand," I told Michael and Janet. "This is where I reclaim my name." Living in Janet's guest house provided a sanctuary where I could rebuild my strength and plan my next moves. The effects of the forced medication slowly faded, allowing my mind to regain its sharpness. Each morning I woke with one thought: I would reclaim everything that had been stolen from me. Michael Torres and his team worked methodically to build our case. We gathered medical records proving I had no psychiatric issues prior to my forced commitment. Financial documents showed the suspicious timing of asset transfers immediately after my breakdown. Witnesses came forward, including university colleagues who had questioned the sudden narrative of my mental decline. "We have enough evidence for criminal charges of fraud, conspiracy, and abuse," Michael explained during one of our strategy sessions. "But prosecuting them is only part of the solution. We need to restore your reputation and identity just as publicly as they tried to destroy it." I began reconnecting with trusted former colleagues, carefully revealing the truth about my absence. Many were shocked, having believed William's elaborate lies. Others admitted they had harbored doubts, but felt powerless to intervene. There was something off about the whole situation, my former teaching assistant confessed. "You were completely lucid and organized the day before you supposedly had this breakdown. Then William showed up with all this documentation and tearful stories. It seemed scripted." An appointment with the university president, arranged discreetly through a sympathetic board member, proved pivotal. President Richardson had known me for decades and listened with growing horror as I presented evidence of William and Sophia's scheme. "This is beyond unconscionable," he said when I finished. "The university has unwittingly been complicit in erasing your identity and accomplishments." He assured me of his support and confirmed my suspicion. William and Sophia were scheduled to receive the Distinguished Alumni Service Award at the upcoming donor banquet. "They will be expecting to stand on that stage and bask in recognition for your work," he said. "What if instead you were there to reclaim your rightful place?" The president's suggestion aligned perfectly with my emerging plan. I secured an invitation to the banquet, not as an honored guest, but as an anonymous donors +1, ensuring my name wouldn't appear on any attendance lists William might see. Meanwhile, Michael connected me with Diane Winters, an investigative journalist who had exposed similar cases of elder abuse and fraud. She was immediately interested in documenting my story. "What happened to you is part of a growing pattern," Diane explained. "Vulnerable individuals, particularly women, being institutionalized for convenience and profit. Your case could help others recognize the warning signs." Diane introduced me to other families affected by Serenity Hills Psychiatric Facility. Their stories mirrored mine. Loved ones, committed under false pretenses, assets drained, while they were medicated into compliance reputations, destroyed through carefully constructed narratives of mental decline. Together with Michael, we began preparing a class action lawsuit against the facility targeting their practice of accepting patients without proper independent psychiatric evaluation. As the legal machinery moved forward, Michael secured an emergency court order freezing all Adams family assets pending investigation. William and Sophia would not discover this until they attempted a significant transaction, by which time I hoped to have already confronted them publicly. Physically preparing for the confrontation became part of my daily routine. I walked 5 miles each morning, rebuilding the strength that months of forced sedation had diminished. I practiced speaking clearly and confidently, working past the occasional word-finding difficulties left by both the stroke and the medications. Janet accompanied me to a therapist specializing in trauma recovery, who helped me process the profound betrayal I had experienced. What makes your case particularly complicated is that the betrayal came from the two people you should have been able to trust most, Dr. Lynn observed. Your husband of 40 years and the daughter you raised. That creates a complex grief that needs to be acknowledged. I allowed myself to grieve the marriage I thought I had, the daughter I thought I knew, but I channeled that grief into determination rather than despair. With Janet and the support group of fellow survivors, I rehearsed what I would say at the banquet. We practiced scenarios, anticipated reactions, prepared for every possible attempt to discredit me. They will likely claim you are still mentally ill, Michael warned. We need witnesses ready to confirm your lucidity. We arranged for 3 respected psychiatrists to attend the banquet, prepared to counter any accusations about my mental state. My former department chair agreed to speak to my professional competence if needed. For the confrontation itself, I needed to look nothing like the fragile, medicated woman William had last seen. I selected an elegant burgundy gown I had never worn before, nothing Sophia would have seen in my closet, and appropriated for herself. Janet helped me choose a new hairstyle, shorter and more modern than the one Sophia had copied. You need to look like yourself, but a stronger, reborn version, Janet suggested. I spent hours at her dining room table practicing my confrontation speech, balancing factual evidence with emotional impact. It needed to be powerful enough to cut through any attempts to dismiss me, clear enough that even those hearing the story for the first time would understand the magnitude of the betrayal. The day before the banquet, Michael arranged an anonymous tip to the local newspaper about potential academic fraud to be revealed at the university event. This ensured media presence without explicitly mentioning me or alerting William. President Richardson helped ensure strategic seating arrangements, placing me at a table directly in William's line of sight during his acceptance speech, but positioned where he wouldn't notice me during the cocktail hour or dinner. We coordinated with campus security, providing them information about the situation and ensuring they understood that despite any commotion, I was acting within my rights. As a precaution, Michael arranged for a police detective, familiar with the case, to attend, prepared to intervene if William or Sophia attempted to flee. The evening before the banquet, Janet found me sitting alone in her garden, staring at the stars. Having second thoughts, she asked gently. Not about confronting them, I said. I'm thinking about Sophia. Where did I go wrong as a mother, that she could do this, that she could plot for years, to essentially become me after erasing me? Janet sat beside me. This isn't about your mothering, Angelina. Some people have something broken inside them that no amount of love can fix. William encouraged her worst instincts instead of helping her develop empathy and boundaries. I still love her, I admitted, the words painful to speak, even after everything. Is that foolish? It's human, Janet said. Just don't let that love stop you from holding her accountable. I nodded, resolve hardening. Tomorrow I reclaim my name. I reclaim my life. And they face the consequences of what they've done. As I prepared for bed, I took out the single piece of jewelry I had managed to keep with me through my ordeal, my mother's simple gold wedding band, which I had worn on a chain around my neck for decades. It had been the one thing the facility had allowed me to keep considering it of minimal value. Looking at it, I thought about legacy, about what we pass down through generations. Sophia had tried to steal my identity, but tomorrow I would show her and the world that Angelina Adams could not be erased so easily. The Brentwood University Alumni Center glowed with warm light as I approached my heart, hammering against my ribs. Janet squeezed my hand reassuringly before we separated. She would enter normally while I used a side entrance arranged by President Richardson to avoid being seen too early. From a small anteroom with a view of the main hall, I watched the guests arrive. The university's elite mingled with wealthy donors, faculty members, and distinguished alumni, everyone dressed in their finest laughing networking, completely unaware of the drama about to unfold. Then I saw them. William entered confidently silver hair, perfectly coiffed, wearing a tuxedo that I had purchased for him the previous Christmas. Beside him, Sophia glided in wearing a black evening gown that looked disturbingly familiar. It was mine, a designer piece I had worn to the faculty formal 2 years earlier. Most shocking was the jewelry adorning her neck, my mother's pearl necklace, the one William had given me on our wedding day. The sight of that precious heirloom around her throat made my blood boil. I watched as they worked the room like practiced politicians. William's charm was on full display as he introduced Sophia Adams to new faculty members. She mimicked my gestures, the way I tilted my head, when listening intently, even my signature laugh. My wife, Mrs. Adams, I heard William say to a new engineering professor. The deliberate ambiguity of the introduction, making me nauseous. Sophia had studied me all her life, and now she was performing me with disturbing accuracy. She discussed literature with my former colleagues, referenced committees I had chaired, and spoke about her book to an admiring group of graduate students. Following our plan, I waited until dinner service began before taking my assigned seat. The table was positioned where I could clearly see William and Sophia at the head table, but partially obscured by a large floral centerpiece that would prevent them from immediately noticing me. As I sat down, I caught President Richardson's eye. He gave me a slight nod confirmation that everything was proceeding as planned. The first course was served. I barely touched my food, every nerve in my body alert, watching William and Sophia bask in the attention of those around them. They looked so comfortable in their stolen lives, so certain they had succeeded in erasing me. William rose to accept a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, raising it in a toast to the university dean. As he turned, his eyes swept across the room and landed directly on me. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the polished floor. Conversations nearby halted at the crash heads turning toward the disturbance. William's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing without sound. He gripped the back of his chair for support. Sophia, noticing her father's distress, followed his gaze. When she saw me, her reaction was even more dramatic. She physically recoiled, knocking over her water glass, her face contorting in shock and fear. "It cannot be," I read on her lips. Around them, confusion spread as people noticed their distress. William recovered first, whispered urgently to Sophia, and began moving toward me. Michael Torres, as planned, intercepted him halfway. "Mr. Adams, I suggest you return to your seat. This is not a conversation you want to have publicly." William hissed something at Michael, trying to push past him, but the university security personnel we had briefed moved subtly into position, creating a barrier. President Richardson approached the podium, tapping the microphone to gain attention. Ladies and gentlemen, before we present tonight's Alumni Award, we have a special guest who has requested a moment to address you all, someone many of you know well and have greatly missed. Please welcome back to Brentwood University Professor Angelina Adams. A murmur rippled through the crowd as I rose and made my way to the podium. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sophia frantically whispering to those around her, likely trying to discredit me before I could speak. The walk to the stage felt like the longest journey of my life. With each step, I shed months of victimhood, drawing strength from the supportive gaze of Janet Michael and the allies we had gathered. Standing at the podium, I surveyed the room, making eye contact with colleagues, who looked stunned to see me so joyful. Others confused, a few uncomfortable, as they began to realize what my presence meant. Good evening. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. For those who don't know me, I am Professor Angelina Adams. The real Angelina Adams. The room fell completely silent. Many of you were told I suffered a mental breakdown following a minor stroke last year. You were informed I had been institutionalized at my own request, that I was suffering from dementia and psychosis. Some of you were even shown documents and medical reports confirming this diagnosis. I paused, letting the tension build. Every bit of that information was a lie. Gasps echoed through the banquet hall. William's face contorted with rage, while Sophia appeared frozen in terror. I never had a mental illness. I never requested psychiatric treatment. I was drugged, institutionalized against my will, and nearly erased from existence through an elaborate scheme orchestrated by my husband of 40 years, William Adams, and my daughter Sophia. I gestured to the screen behind me, where Diane Winters activated a carefully prepared slideshow. The first image showed my admission papers to Serenity Hills with William's forged signature, where mine should have been. While I was forcibly medicated into compliance at a psychiatric facility under false pretenses, my identity was systematically stolen. My home, my assets, my professional reputation, and even my personal identity were appropriated. The slideshow continued, showing financial documents, forged signatures, and finally side-by-side photos of Sophia before and after, transforming her appearance to mimic mine, wearing my clothes, my jewelry, even adopting my hairstyle. This was not a misunderstanding or a medical necessity. It was identity theft, elder abuse, and fraud, perpetrated by the two people I should have been able to trust most in this world. William suddenly pushed toward the stage. "She's still ill," he shouted. "This is exactly the kind of paranoid delusion her doctors warned about." I remained calm, as security prevented him from approaching closer. "I anticipated that response, William. That's why I've brought 3 independent psychiatric experts who have thoroughly evaluated me." I gestured to the doctors seated near the front. "All have certified that I am of sound mind, with no evidence of the conditions you claimed I suffered from." Dr. Abrams, the most senior psychiatrist, stood. "I can confirm that Mrs. Adams shows no signs of psychosis or dementia. My detailed evaluation concluded she is fully competent, and her account of events is consistent with evidence of wrongful institutionalization." William's face flushed with anger. "You don't understand what she was like before. The accusations, the paranoia." "We have the diary, Sophia." I interrupted, my voice cutting through William's protests. "Your diary detailing every step of the plan you and your father created. How you would have me committed, how you would take my place, how you would become Mrs. Adams." Sophia's face crumpled. She grabbed her purse and stood to leave, but found her path blocked by campus security. The authorities have been provided with extensive evidence. I continued addressing the stunned audience. But I wanted to come here tonight to this place where I spent my career among people who knew me to reclaim my identity publicly. I am Angelina Adams. I did not disappear. I was not erased. And I will not be silenced. As I spoke, I saw recognition dawning on the faces of colleagues and friends. Some looked horrified as they realized they had been unwitting participants in my erasure. Others appeared relieved, as if doubts they had harbored were finally confirmed. The award being presented tonight recognizes contributions to this university, many of which were my work. Programs I developed, scholarships I arranged, community partnerships I nurtured. While I was imprisoned and drugged, these accomplishments were being attributed to the new Mrs. Adams. I removed my mother's wedding band from around my neck, holding it up for all to see. This is the only piece of jewelry they couldn't take from me. A reminder that who we are can't be stolen, even when everything else is taken away. As I concluded my speech, the doors at the back of the banquet hall opened. 2 police officers entered, accompanied by the detective who had been investigating the case. William and Sophia Adams, the detective, announced, "You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, false imprisonment, and elder abuse." Cameras flashed as journalists documented the scene. William attempted to protest as he was handcuffed, claiming a misunderstanding, a medical necessity, anything to explain away what could no longer be denied. Sophia remained silent, her eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher: hatred, fear, or perhaps in some small measure shame. As they were escorted out, several of my former students stood up and began to applaud. The applause spread, growing into a standing ovation that washed over me like a cleansing wave. President Richardson returned to the podium beside me. Tonight, Brentwood University reclaims one of its most valued members. Professor Angelina Adams, on behalf of the entire university community, we offer our deepest apologies for our failure to recognize what was happening. Your position in the English department awaits your return should you wish it. I stepped back to the microphone. Thank you, but before making any decisions about returning, I need to reclaim something else that was taken from me. I need to reclaim my name. I am, and always will be, the real Angelina Adams. As I left the podium, colleagues and friends surrounded me, offering support, expressing outrage on my behalf, asking how they could help. In that moment, I felt a burden lifting. The truth was finally known. My voice had been heard. And most importantly, I had taken back what was mine. The weeks following the banquet became a blur of legal proceedings, media interviews, and recovery. The story broke nationally, bringing attention to a form of elder abuse that often goes undetected. My case became a catalyst for legislative reform in 3 states, requiring more stringent verification before involuntary psychiatric commitment. William and Sophia faced multiple criminal charges. The evidence against them was overwhelming, particularly after investigators discovered additional victims of similar schemes William had orchestrated through his business connections. Sophia's diary provided a detailed roadmap of their conspiracy, making their defense nearly impossible. Through Michael's legal brilliance, my assets were gradually recovered. The offshore accounts William had established were frozen and eventually returned to my control. Our home, which had been transferred to a trust in Sophia's name, was restored to me through court order. The investigation into Serenity Hills psychiatric facility revealed a pattern of admitting wealthy patients on questionable grounds, then extending their stays while billing insurance companies and depleting patients' assets. My testimony, along with Eleanor's and several others, led to the facility's closure and criminal charges against its administration. When I finally returned to my house, I stood in the foyer, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. This space, once filled with 40 years of memories, had been transformed during my absence. Sophia had redecorated, removing family photos, replacing furniture, erasing visible traces of my existence. "We can change it all back," Janet offered, standing beside me. I considered this, running my hand along the unfamiliar wallpaper. "No, I don't want to go backward. I want to create something new." Over the following months, I reclaimed the space, not by restoring it to what it had been, but by transforming it into something entirely my own. I kept nothing that reminded me of William or the life we had shared. Each room became an expression of the woman I was becoming, not the woman whose identity had been stolen. Professionally, I declined returning to my former teaching position. Instead, I channeled my academic background into writing a memoir about my experience. Erased: How I Reclaimed My Stolen Identity became a bestseller and opened doors to speaking engagements nationwide. "Your story has saved lives," a woman told me, after one such talk, clutching my hand. My mother was being systematically gaslighted by my brother. "We recognized the signs from your book and intervened before he could have her committed." I established the Restoration Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping victims of identity theft, elder abuse, and wrongful institutionalization. We provided legal support, counseling services, and temporary housing for those rebuilding their lives after similar betrayals. Eleanor Blackwood became the Foundation's co-director, her experience and determination proving invaluable. "We turned our victimhood into a mission," she often said during our fundraising events. "That is the greatest revenge." Through this work, I found a new family of sorts. Fellow survivors understood aspects of my experience that even the most well-meaning friends could not comprehend. We shared a unique bond forged through similar trauma and collective healing. My relationship with Michael Torres evolved from professional to personal as we worked together on the foundation. At 69, I had not expected to find romance again, especially after such profound betrayal. But Michael's integrity, compassion, and quiet strength gradually broke down the walls I had built around my heart. "You don't have to trust me right away," he said during our first dinner date, a year after the banquet confrontation. "Trust is earned, and yours is particularly precious now." His patience and understanding helped me navigate the complicated emotions of starting a relationship after William's betrayal. We moved slowly, building a connection based on mutual respect and shared purpose. The most complex aspect of my recovery involved my feelings toward Sophia. Despite everything, maternal love did not simply disappear. I visited her in prison 3 months after her sentencing, uncertain what I hoped to accomplish. She sat across from me in the visitation room, thinner, her carefully crafted resemblance to me now faded. Without access to my clothes, my jewelry, my cosmetics, she looked like a stranger. "Why?" I asked simply. She stared at the table between us. "I always felt like I was living in your shadow. Dad would compare me to you, always finding me lacking. The only time he really noticed me was when I helped him with business matters you weren't interested in. That doesn't explain trying to become me, Sophia." She looked up, then eyes hollow. "It started as his idea. After your stroke," he said, "we could solve his financial problems if you were out of the picture. But I took it further. I thought if I became you, the you he married, the you he admired, he would finally love me the way I needed." The twisted logic broke my heart. "And you never considered that what you were doing to me was wrong." I told myself you would be comfortable, cared for, that you wouldn't know the difference with the medication, that we were giving you peace while we handled the complicated real world. She paused. "I lied to myself because I wanted what you had. I left that visit with no neat resolution, no tearful reconciliation, just a deeper understanding of how family dynamics can warp into something unrecognizable when built on unhealthy foundations. I visited William only once more to show myself I no longer feared him than to seek answers. He remained unrepentant, insisting he had acted out of necessity due to my condition. I recognized the narcissism that had always lurked beneath his charm, now fully exposed without the mask of devoted husband. "I want you to know that I am thriving without you," I told him. Before leaving, "Everything you tried to take from me I've reclaimed and made stronger." He had no response, his power over me finally completely broken. As the second anniversary of my escape from Serenity Hills approached, I stood in my garden, now replanted with flowers of my choosing, and reflected on the journey. The trauma would always be part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had learned to trust my instincts again, to recognize when something felt wrong despite reassurances. I had discovered strength. I never knew I possessed resilience that surprised even me. Most importantly, I had found that identity runs deeper than names, possessions, or social positions. It is something internal that cannot truly be stolen. My new life was not what I had planned or expected, but it was authentically mine. Every decision, every relationship, every aspect of my daily existence now came from a place of conscious choice rather than habit or obligation. I wear my mother's wedding band on my finger now, not around my neck, not as a symbol of marriage, but as a reminder of continuity, of the parts of ourselves that endure through even the most profound betrayals. The foundation work continues to grow, touching more lives each year. Michael and I divide our time between my reimagined home and traveling for speaking engagements. My relationship with Sophia remains complicated, an ongoing process of setting boundaries while acknowledging the unbreakable connection between us. If there is wisdom I would share from this journey, it is this: your name, your story, your truth cannot be stolen if you have the courage to reclaim them. I am and always will be Angelina Adams, not because of a marriage certificate or legal document, but because this is the life I have lived and the woman I have become. What is yours can never truly be taken if you are willing to stand up and declare it still belongs to you. Have you ever had to stand up and reclaim something that was rightfully yours, whether it was your reputation, your confidence, or your voice? Share your story in the comments below. And if my journey has touched you in any way, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and recovery. Remember to share this video with someone who might need to hear that they too can reclaim what has been taken from them. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the courage to speak your truth.